Hey all, welcome back to the swu.report podcast, videocast, wherever you might be viewing this. I am getting this episode out admittedly a little later this week than I wanted to. This is the audio-visual companion piece to the article that I published on Monday on the swu.report website. So this is your Ashes of the Empire pre-release survival guide. So now, this episode here is not going to necessarily be word for word the same as the article itself, but it is going to follow that same structure here as I work through things. So if you've already read it, there won't be a lot new, but there are two cards that I do want to hit on a little later in the episode that now that I've spent a little more time dwelling on this particular format, that I would like to go ahead and include these cards as well that were not in the article. So there's a little something for everybody here. Now, one other thing I want to go ahead and knock out up front before we get too far into the show. Go ahead, like, subscribe, all that sort of thing. Keep me coming back to do this. Leave me a comment here or a comment on the website. That would be great. So let's keep both the podcast growing. If you are subscribing to it there, go leave it a review on iTunes or Podcast Addict or Pocket Cast, wherever you might be listening. Or if you are on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel. Okay, now that we've got most of that stuff knocked out, oh yeah, also don't forget to support the coffee page as well. You can find the link on the swu.report website. Okay, there we go. Now that we've got all of that stuff out of the way that I don't love having to do, but hey, the world is what it is. We've got to do it, right? Now we can jump in on Ashes of the Empire pre-release. So, what is a pre-release? Now, if you're brand new to things, this is going to be a great part for you. If it is something you're already familiar with, you might skip ahead a little. So a pre-release is a special event done a week before a set is readily available for purchase at retailers. So it gives players an excuse to come together to meet up for a, let's say, competitive but casual event. So it's going to be a limited format. So even folks that are new are coming in on the same ground as everybody else. You're going to open 6 booster packs that come in a pre-release box or kit that stores are provided, of course, through FFG. So that kit includes the boosters, includes 2 leaders to start off. It's the same leaders from the Spotlight decks, and a deck box and tokens. So you can be completely, totally new to Star Wars Unlimited and start right here, and you're going to be on exactly the same playing field as everybody else. So you're going to open up those 6 packs. You're going to work out the stuff that you've got and build a deck right then and there. So that's a 30 card deck, smaller deck than constructed at 50, which gives you a little more flexibility in what you need to use, what you have to use. You don't necessarily have to stretch quite as far, right? Now, there are a couple other interesting perks about a limited format. In a constructed game, if you have a card you want in your deck, you are capped at a total of 3 copies of it in your deck, right? In limited, that's a little bit different. if you happen to open 4 copies of a common that you want to play, or 5 copies, whatever the number is, or really whatever the rarity is, you are allowed to play all copies of it that you opened in your pool. So it is possible, maybe not likely, but possible you could get some really interesting, very consistent decks, at least in regards to, say, a particular card because of that. Now, there's something else as well that's important about this, and that has to do with your card pool. So that whole pool that you've got is also essentially your sideboard. So there's no restrictions there. So if your deck is just not really working for you and you decide you want to change it up completely before the next game or before the next round, even, it's a little more flexible than true sideboarding. You can go ahead and change up your whole deck. Maybe you started off with a heroic Mandalorian green deck. And you decide that's just not working for you. And instead, you need to switch it to, I don't know, a villainous Palpatine green deck because you also had a lot of yellow cards. You can go ahead and do that and give that a try. So it lets you be experimental. It lets you really try to work out what you need to do. So let's get moving to Ashes itself, or as you may see it written out most of the time, just as Ash, ASH. That's the set abbreviation for this particular set. So there's a couple new mechanics in this set that we're going to need to cover because they are also very prevalent and important in the pool of cards as you're looking at them. The first one is that there is a new token type in this set. That is the advantage token. So the 2 tokens used in this set are shields and advantage. You are not going to find things like the force or experience here. So what does the advantage token do? It's a token upgrade, much like the other ones I mentioned, but it only gives +1 attack. It does not give any HP or anything. And as soon as that unit ends a combat, that advantage is defeated, or that upgrade, which is an advantage token, is defeated. So that means it's just kind of stored aggression for a very temporary kind of tempo boost, right? You can potentially try to bank several of them, get them off in one big swing. You could use them piecemeal as they come to you. But it is also worth noting, as much as they are pushing aggression so you can attack and use those, on the flip side, they are defeated at the end of any combat, right? So that means that your opponent is able, if they feel the need, to attack into your units in order to defeat those advantage tokens and deprive you of them. Even if your unit is defending, they are used up at the end of that combat. So that sounds, I'm not going to lie, like another push toward this being something you want to use aggressively before something happens to them and you lose them. Now, there's a third point about these advantage tokens that's really worth hitting on, and that's that they are upgrades. So while your unit has them, they do count as upgraded, which matters for some of the removal in the set and some card effects that get turned on while that unit is upgraded. And of course, it does mean there's some game state tracking here as soon as they're defeated. If there are not other upgrades left on the unit, they're going to lose some of those bonuses or eligibility for cards. So do take a little time to watch that in your management of what is or is not upgraded. So the other mechanic in the set, this is a new keyword called support. So when you play a support unit, you immediately get to choose another unit you have and attack with that unit, which is huge. This is giving you a free extra attack action. We've already seen how big something like, say, Cinta from Secrets of Power was by allowing you to compound action advantage like that. Support goes ahead and spreads that out to a variety of bodies. There is an additional bit to that. And I realize that now looking at it, that my write up on the website inadvertently kind of skipped this. That is not the only thing that support does. It also gives the abilities of your support card to the one that you are attacking with. So if your support card has multiple keywords, let's say, for example, support and overwhelm, the unit that you are attacking with now also gains overwhelm. That's also true for abilities such as when attack, do X, Y, or Z, right? So that also gives you some extra flexibility to get kind of a surprise use out of an ability that your opponent was not expecting to be on the board. So in some ways, this is a bit like ambush, which I think folks are already aware was an extremely strong keyword due in part to that action compression, the surprise factor, and so on. Support does maybe take a half a step back from that by requiring you to have a second unit on the board already. But I still expect this to be very strong and for this environment to be very kind of tempo motivated, and someone that is able to play with several support units over the course of the game, I think is going to be really ahead on the action game, be able to take initiative when they need it, ensure that their next action on the next turn is going to go off without something hampering it, things like that. Okay. And a couple other quick notes here from the article. These are not new ideas in this set by any means, but they are things I want to hit on. Number one is please, please, please do not forget the space arena. This is the type of thing that I will keep harping on forever. Space is extremely important. In a constructed game, you can try to mitigate that with removal, restore, things like that if you are not playing to the space arena. Maybe a hyperspace disaster as a reset, things like that. In limited and sealed in particular here, that's just not feasibly an option for most card pools. So do make sure you are playing things in your deck into the space arena so you can contest it when your opponent does it. And if they don't, hey, you've got free damage headed straight to base, which even if it's a pretty mediocre unit, I think we all know that's still a clock your opponent is going to have to deal with. Now, the final note here is about bases. In the prior set in Lawless Time, we had some ability bases, of course, with the splash effect. In prior sets, we've had rare bases with unique special abilities. In Ashes of the Empire, we have returned to just plain generic 30 health, no ability bases. And that's all there is in this set. So to some extent, that simplifies some of your building decisions and weighting of what direction to choose. It's really just going to be your card pool in those colors. Maybe a splash for a really important removal piece or something. But you're going to be much more focused this time around, I think. So for my early read on the set here, what do we think about the various aspects or colors? Who's the leader? Who should you jump at if you've got the opportunity? That type of thing. And I think Vigilance is, again, like many other sets, Vigilance is the standout of where I would start here. It's got Sentinel bodies that are increasingly sticky. It's got solid defensive stat lines, base restoring and healing effects for long games. And of course, it's got removal, right? You've got fantastic options here. Imperial Armored Commando, Home One, Sentinel bodies, all sorts of things. We'll hit on specifics later, but I think Vigilance or Blue is the deepest aspect to be looking at in a limited environment. Next up, I think, is probably cunning. Trickery, it's got a good bit of token generation, generally the advantage token, there. With the push as well for better sentinel bodies, I do think that really boosts the applicability of the saboteur keyword, and cunning has some very reasonable saboteur bodies to be looking at to get around those sentinels. And honestly, out of the leaders I've picked out for the ones I'm interested in, cunning takes the lead there on the leader front as well. Command, I think in third here, gets a bit of a mention for some solid mid-range bodies, good density of the support keyword, which again has great tempo. Finally, I think in a general sense, aggression is probably at the lower end of the scale in this particular format. It does have some cheap beaters, some glass cannons, and that type of thing. But I really think vigilance is where you want to be if your pool will let you. Now, that said, let's move on to the leader breakdown I mentioned. And you may notice the first leader that I mentioned is actually for the color that I mentioned is at the bottom of that heap. So this is a tricky one, and it's an evidence of how single particular cards can really be pushed in a power level that is far beyond the rest of their support. So first up, we've got Cad Bane. He is an aggression villainy leader. Action, exhaust to deal 1 damage to a unit with 2 or more remaining HP. Then he deploys on 6 as a 4/7 with Overwhelm, and then does the same ability on attack. Now, this is a leader that everyone is extremely excited about for Premier. And I see why. This is a fantastic control tool. It's got a very solid body, and it has an ability that does not cost a resource, which I think is also always a bit of an edge for leaders. So he is one that is going to make all of your trades more valuable. And again, kind of that tempo aspect of trading in a sealed format like a pre-release is going to become all the more important to be able to try to get 2-for-1s. So you can use Cad's ability, say you've got a 4 attack unit on the board. They have a 5 health unit. You can use Cad's ability to do 1 damage to it since it has more than 2 remaining HP. Now it only has 4 left. Now you are able to attack into it and actually take it out. Of course, in that example, that's not really a 2-for-1, but that is hopefully letting you trade up curve, which is also beneficial from more of a resource perspective. But I think CAD is great in both directions. So if you've got the opportunity to pair CAD, particularly with blue or yellow in this pool, as I feel those aspects are stronger, I think your deck is going to be looking pretty good. So next up, who do we have after that? We have Luke Skywalker. Luke is one of the 2 leaders that everyone is going to get in their pre-release kit from the Spotlight deck. So Luke is a Vigilance Heroic unit, and when a friendly unit's attack ends, you may exhaust this leader. If you do, heal 1 damage from that unit. Then he deploys on 7 as a 6/7, and when a friendly unit's attack ends, heal 2 damage from that unit or your base. So he does change slightly on his hero side. I do admit in most limited games, 7 resources is probably about the end of the game. But I think this Luke gives you an opportunity to get some more of those 2-for-1s, potentially keep some of your units alive that would have that would have died otherwise. So they are able to take out an additional unit or get an additional attack on their base. He has a very large body of his own, so he puts a lot of pressure on and may be able to finish a game when he flips. And as well, on that turn, you have a huge ability to heal your base. Of course, he does count as a friendly unit, so he can heal for 2 when he attacks. But if you've got another couple units on the board, I think it's very reasonable to look at healing something like 6 on the turn you bring Luke Luke out, which potentially buys you quite a bit of time. Additionally, as I said, everyone has him, so I do think that is worth looking at him for that reason, particularly because the vigilance card pool is so strong. And if you open a strong vigilance card pool, but not another terribly exciting vigilance leader, I think Luke is a very reasonable option to drop right in there. Now, one other parting thought before I go, I did already mention with Cad Bane that leaders that do not cost a resource for their ability tend to have a bit of a leg up in most formats, allowing you to make sure you're playing on curve, or at least not deliberately forcing yourself below curve or behind curve. There we go, behind. So Luke already has that benefit, but he actually has another benefit, which is that his ability is not an action itself. Now, this game does not have this terminology built in, but past games that I have played, particularly past FOG games, Game of Thrones, used the terminology reaction, right? So that was a keyworded timing trigger, a bolded timing trigger, much like when played is in Star Wars Unlimited. So any of these leaders that effectively have, let's call it a reaction ability, meaning you don't have to spend a separate action on it, also give you a tempo leg up. They also give you kind of that action plus, as my friend Daryl in the Swu clan is fond of saying. So Luke has kind of a double tempo advantage on his abilities. He goes, well, tempo and resource. So I think that's also worth looking at. Next up, we bounce over to yellow, to cunning for Grief Karga. So he's cunning heroic. When you play or create a unit, you may exhaust this leader. If you do, give an advantage token to that unit. Then he deploys on 6 as a 4/7 with the same ability, but of course does not exhaust to do it. Grief, I think, is just a really efficient value engine. I mean, I think he has a reasonable enough body for the turn he comes out, which is great. But the thing that he really does is give you free additional stats. You're going to be playing a deck in a limited environment that is playing cards that you would not otherwise play in Constructed, right? Cards that are just a little too slow for what they should be, or a little understated, things like that. And Grief mitigates that. He may not make your cards into absolute bombs, but that extra 1 attack from the advantage token goes a long way toward making sure that those bodies are closer to being on curve, or maybe a little above curve, allowing you to make more and more efficient trades as the game goes on, or just to pile more damage onto base and create a faster clock. I think Grief is actually, in a limited environment, one of the best leaders we've got available here, because he just takes the state of the deck that you are already going to have, and he just makes it better and more efficient just across the board for doing exactly what you would have done anyway. He asks nothing extra of you. And get this, as we talked about a little bit before, his ability does not cost a resource, and it is effectively a reaction, right? So you're getting that same resource, that same tempo advantage off of Grief. I can't talk this up enough. I think he's going to be great. Okay. What do we have next? We are still in yellow. This time we're going to bounce over to Cunning Villainy for Shin Hati. When a friendly unit's attack ends, you may exhaust this leader. If you do, exhaust a unit that costs less than the amount of combat damage dealt to abase this attack. And then she deploys on 6 as a 4/6 and has the same ability. Now, her body, I think, is respectable enough. On 6, obviously, it's slightly worse than Grief's, who's a 4/7, but I think we can still work with this. That's still respectable for a leader in the current age. Her ability, though, again, kind of just rewards you for doing what you're already going to be doing, right? You're going to be playing units, you're going to be attacking with those units. And she gives you some added kind of tempo flexibility here. Of course, her ability has the same pluses that I've already talked about. It's a reaction and it costs nothing. So that's already pretty interesting to be looking at. But she also lets you do, when you do damage to their base, which is something you want to do to end the game anyway, you then get to exhaust something on their side. This does take a little bit of management of how much attack you have, how much damage you can actually do to their base versus what you'll be able to exhaust on their side of the table. But that, I think, is still the type of thing that really sets you up to always be ahead of that tempo game, always in action ahead, always able to keep them on their back foot as they try to figure out either how to attack with their units into yours for trades or how to also race you on base. And I do think there's a couple other things that's really worth noting with Shin. And that's aside from the fantastic art, right? So one is that her ability does not restrict you to which of the two arenas you're exhausting in. So, for instance, if you're heavy in the ground and your opponent is making it a race controlling the space arena, you can use her to disrupt that, to try to catch up, to try to keep them from being able to close. And I think that kind of cross arena ability is something that the game needs more of and is going to be a real plus for her. Now, the final thing that's worth pointing out with her is I mentioned tempo is going to be real important here, support, that type of thing to compress your actions, right? So that you're able to go first as the first action of the next round to ensure that something you need to do happens first. And I think that is also going to be very important for Shin. It's worth watching. I think there will be situations where you are going to elect to take initiative, even when you had a couple other actions you could have taken, just so you can make certain that you have the first action the next round to attack with something and use her ability to exhaust something else to keep your opponent from being able to close the game, for instance. So do watch out for that. Okay. Next up, we have Emperor Palpatine, still here in cunning villainy, right? Now, this one, I don't think he's actually all that great, but he is the other spotlight leader that's going to be included in every pre-release pack. So I think he's worth talking about. And much like Luke, if you've got a pretty good cunning pool, which I think is probably the second place aspect in this set, it may be worth going ahead and playing Emperor Palpatine just based on your pool. So, action. Choose an exhausted friendly unit, give an advantage token to it for each other friendly unit. Then he deploys on 7 as a 4/8, and he does essentially the same thing on attack. You may choose another exhausted friendly unit. If you do, give an advantage token to it for each other friendly unit. So this is the type of thing that I do worry is maybe a bit of a win more. You already need a reasonable sized board presence to get much out of this because it's other friendly unit, not each friendly unit. So if you only have one unit on the table, you cannot give any buff to that unit. You can still use this ability. It just will not give any buffs. You need at least 2 units on the table to get 1 advantage token, and so on. So I do think it's going to be a little bit trickier to get much value out of that. It's also a bit slow in that you can only give it to an exhausted friendly unit. So that gives your opponent the opportunity to attack into it, to remove the advantage tokens, as we talked about before. It means you're not able, without some kind of shenanigans, you're not able to attack with that unit until next turn. So even if they can't attack into it, they've still got time to do other things before you can use it at all. He's also a true action ability, so he's a little bit behind on tempo compared to the other leaders I was talking about so far. So I do not think he's a great choice. He's just kind of slow across the board, but he will be available for everyone. So I did want to talk about that. So, okay, what else do we have that's worth mentioning here? We've got Grand Admiral Sloan, who, and I'm not going to detail all of these exhaustively, but Grand Admiral Sloan, who has an action ability to pick an arena and then give every unit in that arena support and overwhelm. Grand Admiral Thrawn, who is vigilance and villainy, and you attack it. It is an action to attack with a unit. It gains Restore 2 if you have exactly the same number of units as your opponent. Ahsoka is Command Heroism. She's an action to choose a unit with less power than a friendly unit and give it +2/+0 for the phase. And then Balin Skull is a Vigilance Villainy action. Pay 1, give a friendly unit +2/+2 for the phase if it's the only unit you have in that arena. So all of these, I think, offer interesting value abilities. They are in colors that I think are okay, but I kind of mostly put them in a second tier here, where there's a little bit of extra work that you need to do. They're all regular actions. They all do things like give a buff, and now your opponent has an action before you're actually able to use that character. They take some extra micromanagement of what you have in a particular arena, or even attempting to exactly match your opponent on total units. I don't think they're necessarily bad, and some of them just have very reasonable stats for the turn they come out. But I do just think they're going to take a little bit more management, be a little bit more off on tempo compared to the other ones I wanted to highlight. The final 3 that I'm going to hit on are the ones I'm going to advise you guys to probably stay away from in a limited environment. That's Bo-Katan Kryze, Moff Gideon, and Grogu. All of these really benefit from a constructed environment where you can really lean in on a particular thing you want to do with them. A couple of them, Bo-Katan and Gideon, have kind of these typal effects, Mandalorian tokens or Imperial specifically to really power them up, or Grogu needs really specific cost density of 4 or more, which is obviously kind of mid-game for a limited game. So I just think these are not going to have the pool needed to utilize them in a deck pretty much ever. So yeah, I would stay away from these. So next up, quick word here about rares, bombs, legendaries, that sort of thing. We're not going to talk about those as we go here. They are by virtue of their rarity, cards you may or may not see. It's going to be very hit or miss. Do consider ones that you get for your specific deck, but when discussing an overall strategy, they're going to be too sparse for us to realistically consider and talk about here. So if you got something awesome, if it fits your colors, congrats. Slam that into the deck, enjoy the ride. Even maybe if it's a bit of a spicy off color rare that it's reasonable to pay the extra 2 to play it, you might slot it in. Just don't warp your deck to do that. And hey, if they're all just mediocre, don't sweat it. The bulk of everything you win and lose off of the uncommons and commons in sealed anyway. So let them tell you what you're going to do with your deck. All right, let's take a look at some of the cards now. The uncommons that are really going to push a game here. We've got Home 1 at the top of the list. It's a Vigilance Heroic, 8 cost for 7/10. Sentinel, and when played, heal all damage from each friendly unit. You're not always going to get to 8 resources. I acknowledge that up front, but it's a 7/10 Sentinel in space. If you can get there and survive, not only does it freshen up the rest of your board to keep you in the game, but it locks down the space arena, and it's big enough that it can probably end the game for you on one attack, possibly two, but hopefully just one attack at that point in the game. It's definitely, I think, one of the biggest, kind of scariest bodies available at uncommon that is still kind of in an attainable place to play. So at 8, that's still, like I said, a real cost here. So don't sweat it if it needs to be resourced or something. Don't bend yourself over backward trying to get to 8 to play it. Next up, we've got Kira in just Cunning. She's a 7 cost 7/9 who gets -1/-0 for each card in your hand. But when played, you may discard a card from your hand, and if you do, deal 3 damage to a unit. So let's already talk about the kind of cost rate here is phenomenal for that amount of attack, right? Sure, she's probably going to have some minuses due to cards in your hand, but also she you play her late enough that your hand is probably a little thinner than it would otherwise be. So I think it's very likely for her to probably be a 7 cost 7/7. Certainly once you have discarded a card from your hand, which means, she's removal as well, right? Not only is she a huge body that your opponent will have to deal with that can end games in an attack, but she also can potentially remove something on their side of the board. And as I talked about with Shinhati, Kira can go across arenas. So that is even bigger, I think, in this type of game to have removal that flexible. I think she'll help you really shore up some weaknesses and close things down when you really need to. Next up, Scorpionic Annihilator Droid. It's a 6 cost Cunning and Command. We've got one of our dual aspects here. It's a 5/5 with Sentinel, Shielded, and Overwhelm. This is one of the sticky shielded bodies that I was talking about before. Again, it really pushes vigilance in that direction, though obviously you have to have command to pair with it. The 5/5 for 6 is maybe not the best stats, but I think it's reasonable. And when you also consider that it's shielded, it plays as though it had quite a bit more health than that, right? So your opponent is going to have to attack into it. The 5 attack is large enough for that to be a threat of them losing whatever they attack into it. It probably defends a couple times. Or if you need to finish a game yourself, that Overwhelm lets you turn it back the other way. Try to make sure that you're doing some damage to base when you attack. I think this is efficient at kind of that top end. All right, next up, Halo. That is a 5 cost Cunning 4/4. Again, not a great rate there to have cost higher than attack and HP. Kind of an unassuming ability, but it's got support, which I've already talked about is really solid tempo ability. And when attack ends, if the defending unit was defeated, give a shield token to this unit. So it can keep itself alive. If you can keep killing things, it can help you keep the space lane clear and keep shielding back up so that it can keep doing its thing. But also it's great that support grants that when attack ends ability to whatever you attack with the support. So that also is going to help you keep something else alive that round and kind of take over advantage of the board state by defeating their units and then protecting yours. I think that could be a really clutch surprise play to be able to shield up and protect something on your side. Next up, we've got Trask Walker. This is another one, probably a little better in constructed, I will admit. But that is an 8 cost 5/9. The absolute butt of a body here, just a wall, right? That opponents would have to attack into for days to get rid of. And when played / on attack, choose a unit in your discard pile that costs 7 or less. Either put that card in the bottom of your deck and heal 3 damage from your base, or return it to your hand. The attack is reasonable, but not great here at 8 cost. It is not a fast clock on your opponent by any means, but it keeps you alive. and offer some cost advantage, or some card advantage options here. It could really help you stabilize a board or get some threats back that you need to try to finish off the game. Again, I think much like Home 1, it's kind of at that edge where I would be including it, and in the games that support it, I think it could be really clutch, but don't bend yourself over backward trying to get to 8 no matter what. Next up, we've got the Cyborg Mech. This is a 6-cost aggression villainy, 3/7 with grit, and when played, either deal 2 damage to an undamaged ground unit or 5 damage to a damaged ground unit. So, not a great attack right off the bat, but grit means if they try to attack into it to remove it at all, you're almost certainly now able to attack with it for a huge amount after that. And the when played ability is some awesome removal on its own, right? There's going to be some weaker units that you can just tag out with the 2 damage, maybe some bigger stuff. Maybe you get the opportunity to pair it with CAD so that anything you've already gotten at least 1 damage on, you can now completely knock out with the extra 5 damage. And I mean, I'm not going to recommend this most of the time, but bare minimum, if you just need a body with some attack on the board, you can do the 2 damage to itself and you get a 6-cost 5/5. I wouldn't always recommend it, but it's an option. So let's see here. I did pull up another couple cards. I think they're common, so we'll wait to get to them. On the rest of the uncommon front, are there others that are worth playing? Sure. This particular guide is not here to go over every single card in the card pool and see what happens, but I'm going to give you a few framework pieces to take a look at when you're deciding about your uncommons and what to include. So some highlights to be looking at if it does one of these things. So if it removes an opposing unit, if it provides an above rate body, so stats better than that cost, it has a way to generate advantage tokens repeatedly, or it has support for effects in this set, or finally, if it's in space. Again, I said I'd keep hammering on that. So all of those, I think, are good criteria, good shortcuts, kind of rules of thumb about deciding whether you're going to include it. Next up, we've got the commons. Now, these are what are really going to define your deck. These are what you're going to open the most of. So first up, we've got some of these sticky bodies. We've got the Imperial Armored Commando, 4-cost, Vigilance and Villainy, 4/3 with Sentinel and Shielded. Just efficient, solid keywords on this body. Some of the same arguments apply here that I made about Scorpinek. And that's that Shielded on Sentinel is already huge. This is a very solid rate for attack here. This is a body that's really going to muck up the ground and make it annoying for your opponent to actually get damage through to base without losing potentially multiple units on their side trying to get through it. Next up, we bounce over to Cunning Villainy for Emperor's Champion. It is a 4-cost, only a 3/5 with Shielded and Saboteur. Now, I admit that 3-cost looks a little unassuming. Pardon me. It is not doing a ton of damage to your opponent when you attack with it, but Shielded and 5 health is just such kind of an awkward, annoying stat line for your opponent to remove without some sort of, event that just defeats a unit, no damage dealt. This is the sort of thing that is awkward to trade into. Obviously, you have to get rid of the shield. Then you also have to get through 5 health, which is just a lot for the amount of damage it does. It's kind of puts your opponent in a frustrating spot to have to choose to get rid of it versus doing damage to your base. Now, the other thing here, and this is the one that I think is what really puts it on my radar to look at in this set, is the Saboteur, which gets you around your opponent's Sentinels, like that Imperial Armored Commando we were just looking at. I think I think Sentinel is very prevalent, and because of that, Saboteur stock has really gone up this set. So a Saboteur with a reasonable, if not great attack, that is just kind of frustrating for your opponent to bother to get rid of, I think is going to low-key really be clutch here for people. Okay, next up, we got Blurg. We're going to bounce over to Command for 3 cost, 3 attack, 4 health, with support and overwhelm. You may notice most of these comments just kind of have a pair of keywords. And at that rarity level, I think that's efficient. That's kind of to be expected. That's very reasonable for us, right? So this has the tempo effect we were already talking about with support to get a free attack action. It's got overwhelm, which also I think can help you squeeze through a few extra points of damage, particularly again with things getting mucked up with sentinels. The ability to grant some overwhelm might let you go over the top to deal enough damage to end the game. Okay. Then we've also got the Trexler Armored Marauder in Vigilance. That is a 6 cost, 5/6. Stats are great. Are okay, not great. They're beefy enough. But that grit that it's got is going to help punch that up even higher if your opponent bothers to try to tack into it. It's still a reasonable enough clock on their own, but if they try to trade and can't do it in one action, you now are probably doing a lot of damage back. And the real kicker, when played, you may give a shield token to a unit that costs 3 or less. So if you've got anything else still sitting around on the board that's at a smaller size, this lets you shield up and protect it. So I think this has got a lot coming for it. Reasonable body, reasonable clock, some extra protection for something else to generate some additional card advantage. I think this is really solid. Now, I'm going to go ahead and slot in here a couple of the commons that I had not previously talked about that I think are worth kind of adding to the discussion now. One is the Helix Starfighter. That's cunning, 4 cost, 3/3. Not great stats, though. Space does often seem to suffer a bit of a stat penalty by virtue of being, for most of the game's consideration, kind of an off arena. And then it has, when played, if an opponent controls a space unit, give a shield token to this unit. Otherwise, give 2 advantage tokens to this unit. So if your opponent is also trying to contest you in space, they were smart enough to read this guide and go in on space as well, then it shields up so that you can hopefully make an extra trade, keep your stuff alive so you're able to put more pressure on or whatever. And if they did not, it just gets a couple advantage tokens so that you can hit even harder to base for a turn and start turning this into a bit of a clock. So I think that's worth watching, especially as a common. I have a gut feeling that this is going to overperform. All right, and next up, this is the one I'm really kicking myself for not dropping into the initial article. This is the 6 cost aggression imposing Scout Walker. So it's a 4/6. So again, reasonable, not overrate stats for 6. But when played, you may deal 3 damage to a ground unit. If it's defeated this way, give 3 advantage tokens to this unit. So again, we've got a body with attached removal on it, which I think is so huge to try to generate what card advantage you can in a limited card pool. And if you are actually able to use that 3 damage as removal, then this gets 3 advantage tokens. That means if your opponent doesn't remove them somehow and you're able to, untap and attack with this, then it's attacking as a 7/6, which might very well close out a game. Now, obviously, it loses the advantage tokens after one attack, but I think it's still done more than enough for you at that point in the game. So I did mention removal in passing there, so let's hit on a little bit of the removal. Probably no big surprise that the best options, I think, are in Vigilance. We already talked about why Vigilance, I think, is the best aspect in this set. So Foundling Rescue, 4 cost to defeat a unit with 2 or less remaining HP, then create a Mandalorian token. Now, of course, that is a pretty narrow targeting restriction. It can always hit other Mandalorian tokens, thankfully. But hopefully you can kind of work with either knocking out some of your opponent's early plays or being able to throw one of your early plays at something bigger on their side to get its HP small enough for the Foundling Rescue. Regardless, this is one of the closest attempts to be able to get a 2-for-1 in this card pool. Like, as printed, this is straight up a 2-for-1, right? You defeat something and then you also create something. And the Mandalorian tokens have a shield on them, so it's possible, if not likely, to turn this into a 3-for-1. So I think this is worth snatching up and playing if you've got it, even if you might have to work a little bit for that targeting. Similarly, Get Lost is a 4-cost Vigilance heroic event that defeats an upgraded non-leader unit. Again, there's a little bit of a targeting thing here you're going to have to work with in the game. And I do think it's worth kind of watching that this gives a large chunk of that targeting control to your opponent instead of, say, with Foundling Rescue, I can attack in with something of my own to try to get their unit's HP down to 2. It's much less likely with Get Lost that I want to put an upgrade of some kind on my opponent's unit in order to be able to defeat it. Sure, there might be scenarios where I want to do that with something like a throwaway advantage token, but we'll have to keep our eyes peeled for that. Next up, we've got Grassroots Resistance. Now, this is a card we've seen in other sets. It's a 4-cost heroism-only event. Deal 3 damage to a unit, heal 3 damage from your base. It's popped up a little bit in some constructed heroic Lando shells, but here in a limited format, I honestly think it's some pretty good value. You get removal, you maybe buy yourself an extra turn worth of healing on your base. I think this is a very reasonable option for you. Next up, we've got Hold Them Off. This is a command event for 4. Choose a friendly unit. That unit deals damage equal to its power, divided as you choose among any number of units in its arena. So this is kind of the ghost, shall we say, of Overwhelming Barrage. So you let your unit deal damage and divvy it up to try to remove multiple units. But we've got a couple hangups here that I think make it noticeably less strong than Overwhelming Barrage, even if this is 1 resource cheaper. So first up, we are no longer getting the +2/+2 bonus. That means we're less likely to have spare damage to spread around to defeat multiple units. It also means one of the additional benefits of Overwhelming Barrage was that it also gave that unit +2 health, which meant your opponent then was not able to attack into it to remove it as easily before you attacked with it to put that +2 attack to use. So we don't get that boost either to the unit's survivability for the turn, nor to its damage output for the turn. And Hold Them Off is limited to just the arena your unit is in. So I think there's a lot of limitations here that make this much worse than Overwhelming Barrage was, but I think it's still one of the better options in the set to maybe try to knock off a couple smaller units. And again, this is a good argument to diversify your arena presence so that you can make sure Hold Them Off is able to target whichever units you actually need. Finally, in the removal realm, we've got Turning the Tide. It's a 3-cost command event. Choose a unit, deal 1 damage to it for each friendly unit. Again, this is the type of effect that really benefits a go wide sort of board. I don't know that you're going to be able to go particularly wide in this set, but units are at least stickier than they used to be in a lot of ways. So I think there's a good chance that this is pretty easily a 3 cost, do 2 damage. I think it is very feasible for it to be a 3 cost, 3 damage. And we've certainly seen a variety of aggression events in that realm that were playable even in constructed. So I think in limited, this may really help you take a little bit of an edge off to finish off some units. I think really the units it finishes off are probably going to be very similar to the Foundling Rescue as far as what it's able to finish off, right? 2 remaining HP. But this is also 1 cheaper. But it also doesn't create a Mandalorian token to leave on your board. So it is what it is. Removal, I think, is noticeably weaker this set or directly tied to units. And we already talked about the strengths of some of those units earlier that have removal tied to them. Now, also, before we go, I do want to spend a little bit of time hitting some space units that I think are going to be worth keeping your eyes peeled for in your pool. First up, we've got Unsanctioned Patrol. It is a 4-cost cunning for 4/4. Support and Saboteur. Again, the double keywords. Again, we know support is going to be great tempo, giving us a spare attack action. This also has Saboteur, which, as I said, I think is going to be huge this set to get around Sentinels trying to muck up the board to keep you from finishing off your opponent. So, of course, it can get around some in space, but honestly, ground is going to get gunked up with Sentinels much more easily in this set. And the Unsanctioned Patrol's ability to grant something on your ground Saboteur, so it can just go straight through those Sentinels and straight to base, I think could really be clutch here. In fact, that support attack may be what lets you finish off several opponents when they were not expecting it, when they thought they had stabilized by, say, dropping an Imperial Commando, and now you're able to just go straight through, straight to base. Next up, we've got the 5-cost command-only Fang Fighter Squadron for a 5/5 with support. This does not even have the double keywords. Admittedly, this is not one of the most exciting commons, but I think it's a really solid role player, especially for space. I think this is on curve 5 for a 5/5. It's a respectable enough threat in space that if they don't answer it, it can finish them off pretty quickly. So keep that in mind if your opponents have not respected the arena split as well as they should have. And again, support, tempo play. It's probably not ever going to see constructed play, but I think it's going to be a very reasonable include in limited. Finally, in this chunk, we've got the Danger Squadron Wingman. It's a 4-cost aggression and heroic for a 4/5. And on attack, you may give an advantage token to another unit. So if you kind of squint at this, it's sort of 4 for a 5/5. Yeah, you've got to have another unit on the board, but it's giving you 5 worth of attack when it adds that advantage token. And frankly, 4 for a 5/5 in space is a phenomenal rate. That's way above curve because space normally seems to suffer a bit of a penalty to that type of stat effect for cost. So I think this is great. It's going to be able to let you spread that attack around where you need it, either to put more pressure on or maybe to make one of your other units big enough to trade with a different unit that's a problem for you. It even potentially has the combo of you giving that advantage token to an opponent's unit so that you can come back up here and then hit it with a get lost now that it's upgraded. I wouldn't recommend that in most situations, but it is a possibility. All right. Next up, we've got some of those kind of glass cannons I was talking about. There are some options here for some cheap pressure to push your opponent with a more aggressive game plan, depending on what you've got. One of the stars of that game plan, I think, is going to be the 3-cost heroic only Yellow Aces Bomber. Now, it's just a 2/4, but it does have support, as we've mentioned repeatedly. And on attack, if this unit is upgraded, deal 2 damage to a base. Upgrades are a bit of a sub-theme in this set. I think there are definitely some respectable, just pure upgrade cards that you might play on this, like Durasteel Plating, to give it a shield and a small stat boost. And you certainly have advantage tokens flowing around. In fact, remember, we just talked about one in the Endangered Squadron Wingmen. Now, it's going to come down the turn after this and not give out an advantage token until the turn after that, but the point stands just that there are these types of effects available. Grief Karga, that we mentioned as a leader, gives Yellow Ace's Bomber an advantage token right out of the gate. And if you've got an advantage token on this, it attacks for 3, then does an additional 2 damage. So that's 5 right there. Now, of course, when the attack ends, you lose that advantage token. You're going to lose the ability to trigger that on attack. But as long as you can do this in several additional ways, this puts a lot of pressure on your opponent. If you can stick something on there and make this a pseudo 5/4 for 3 cost, that is so aggressive for this game. And again, in space, where defenders, where trades, where sentinels are less likely to be seen. Next up, we've got Shin Hati's Fiend Fighter. This is a 2-cost cunning villainy unit. It's a 3/1. Look, I know we all hate to see that 1 health, but I do want you to think about this particular card pool a little bit. Sure, things like Foundling could hit this, but on the leader front, we don't have to worry about things like Mother Talzin and Aura Singh. And in fact, the strong controlling, damage dealing leader in this set, Cad Bane, actually cannot hit Shin Hati's Fiend Fighter since it only has 1 HP. So in kind of a weird way, this actually has protection in this specific environment of the Ashes of the Empire sealed meta. So 3 attack for 2 cost, already reasonably aggressive. In space, even better. Now, get this. When defeated, you may give 2 advantage tokens to a unit. If this unit, meaning the Fiend Fighter, wasn't defeated by combat damage, you may give 3 advantage tokens to that unit, the second unit, instead. So as long as you've got another unit on the board, if your opponent ever kills this, you are continuing to bank, you're continuing to apply aggression and pressure by putting that advantage on another unit of yours that is able to attack. And if they find a way to kill this that's not a trade, an event or something that kills this, you actually get even more aggression out of it to keep the pressure coming. And I think that's the sort of thing that is going to make or break anything attempting like true aggro in this pre-release meta. If you look out in uncommons and grab 2 of these, I would strongly look at trying to build a low curve, fast pressure, go as wide as you can. Your opponent's not going to have a board wipe, and just go to base. Finally, out of these, I'm going to drop the Pathfinder Sergeant. This is a 2-cost command and heroic for a 2/3 ambush and restore 1. And I do need to I guess clarify. I mentioned if you luck out with Shin Hati to go aggressive, but looking at this pool, I do think the 2 and 3 drops are a bit more thin than they have been in other sets. I think the meat and potatoes of what we're looking at and where we're really applying pressure to our opponent is through costs 4, 5, and 6. So it's going to be a little bit tougher, but if you do find yourself on the heroic end of the spectrum, you're looking for stuff to kind of spread out that curve. I think you could do worse than the Pathfinder Sergeant. Again, the double keyword is always a good starting point on a common, and restore hopefully gives you a little bit of extra time here. Maybe you can get another turn's worth out of that if you can restore a couple times. And ambush, of course, is a different variation on that action plus that attack plus something else. So in this case, it's play the card and attack for a single action. So I think there's something to be said there. Honestly, you're probably going to play him early just to keep the curve going, but he's not the worst either to play late game, again, to polish off something that has 2 health remaining, which you may notice appears to be a little bit of a theme of this set as well. So, all right, wrapping up our thoughts here for the pre-release and how you're going to look at constructing your deck. So once you pop everything open, there's going to be a few things that I suggest you take a look at. You're going to set all aside your cards, set aside your leaders and your bases separately in another pile. And then I want you to take the cards that you've gotten, your main deck cards, and I want you to lay those out in a variety of rows, so horizontal and columns up and down, right? And I want you to pick a color or an aspect, let's say vigilance to start with for the first one, and I want you to stack everything that is, again, we're just going to pick one here just for explanations purposes. Let's pick heroism, right? Or heroic. So you're going to have all your vigilance, heroic cards. So blue and white, all in one stack, right? That is going to be the first of both your row and your columns. Then moving down from that, so in the same column, I want you to take all of your blue only, your vigilance only cards and stack them. Then below that, do all of your vigilance villainy. So your black-blue cards. So you're going to have a column that has all of your vigilance cards. And then I want you to go next to that and pick whichever you want next. Let's say command, right? So then you're going to do your command heroism, then below that, your command, then below that, your command villainy. And by the time you're done, you're going to have a column for each color, each aspect. And then you're going to have a row for each, let's say, morality, right? So all of the heroic cards in the top row, all the neutral colors in the middle, and then all of your villainy in the bottom. And this is going to let you see, once you have it laid out, a very tangible way to track where your pool is the deepest and thinnest and what you should be looking at. Then you can go ahead, consult your leaders and bases and match what fits what you actually got. So go ahead, do that. Pick, of course, your leader ability is going to have some weight in what you've got going on. Pick your base for some additional coverage of whatever aspect you need for the secondary. And remember, if you are missing a particular color, because these are all common bases, say for whatever fluke you got no aggression base, but your pool tells you you really need to play aggression, you are allowed to play aggression. You don't have to have opened that base. You can get one possibly from someone sitting nearby you that opened an extra that they are not using, possibly from the store, that type of thing. Just remember, it is only the basic bases you are allowed to do that with, not leaders, not any in-deck cards. So once you've made some of those decisions, you want to start pulling cards from your stacks to fill in the rest of your deck. So there's a few points there as you actually construct the deck that you want to keep track of. Okay. So again, deck building here, you're only building to a 30 card deck. Now, you can probably push that to 31, maybe 32. I probably would not go further than that. In limited, consistency does noticeably start to suffer, and this is not a format where you have, say, 3 of a really important card. So the further you put yourself off of drawing anything that is particularly strong in your deck, the worse that's going to be. This is definitely a format that rewards keeping your deck tight. Next up, do you have enough space units? Again, like I said, don't leave that uncontested. Next up, do you have enough cheap plays? I know that I said the 2s and 3s are kind of thin in this set, so I think this is probably going to make this particular part of your deck building even more important. Make sure you're including enough there so your curve is not too top heavy and you're not giving your opponent, say, the first 2 turns of the game completely free without you contesting them at all. So be on the lookout in the 60 card deck there. In a 30 card deck, I'm probably looking at what, 6-ish, at least. That's your bare minimum. So if nothing else, you probably do want to tend toward cheaper units as you go. It's not crazy, I think, even in only a 30 card deck, to be sitting at something more like 10 or 12 of these 2 and 3 costers. You're gonna wind up with some awkward off resource, kind of off curve plays. Sometimes you're gonna be able to play 2 on 1 turn, things like that. Just I think be more willing to skew lower there rather than trying to make sure you play all of the Kiras and the home ones that you manage to open. So, final thought. Do you have a couple pieces of removal? This is the spot where I would urge you to go ahead and look at splashing, even if you're going to have to pay 2 extra for it off aspect. Removal really can be worth it. So keep your eyes peeled. If your pool told you really need to be in vigilance cunning, but you opened 2 of, 2 turning the tides, that is a card that I think is going to be really worthwhile to still go ahead, pay 5 for, and remove your opponent's stuff especially when they are really not expecting you to play that. That type of thing can really turn games for you. So there you have it, folks. That is the end of the SWU Report pre-release guide. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope this episode still comes out in time for you to listen and take some of these pointers into your events this weekend and throughout the week. I don't know if other places are doing this as well, but I noticed here locally in Springfield, Missouri, the weekend is a bit lighter of events than I expected, and several stores have actually shifted their pre-release event to their regular weekly play night for later in this week. So we've actually got more of a week worth of pre-release events locally than I'm used to. So honestly, let me know, is that something you're also seeing in your local areas? Anyway, thanks for joining us. Again, I'll say, check out the website, give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast, give us a review on iTunes or Podcast Addict or whatever your service might be, Spotify, YouTube, the like. And let me know you're enjoying the show and you want it to continue. And finally, if you want it to continue, especially since I've started doing video and podcasting and all, my costs have gone up from the pretty minimal monthly charge for the web hosting. Now we've got some software costs, some additional storage costs. So please do consider supporting the Ko-fi page. So anyway, thanks again. I know I said it like 3 times. So truly, at this point, may the force be with you.